If you wait until everything makes sense about the journey, if you wait until you have everything figured out, you might never move. I think a lot of us get paralyzed waiting until we see a crystal clear vision of where we should head.
Hello and welcome to The Edit. I am Whitney from Minneapolis.
And I'm Amanda from Seattle.
And today we are so excited to welcome John Noltner from A Piece of My Mind. And I am so excited to have you here, John.
Yes.
And John has a very unique career in photography.
That's a nice way of saying it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unique. It is. And we have a lot of business owners that come in, portrait photographers, commercial photographers, and the work you do is something that you have created for yourself. And just to give you a little overview of what he does, you are not just a photographer, you're a multimedia artist, and that is how you describe your work. I'm going to just read this from your website because it's such a great way to say it. You use portraits and personal stories to bridge divides and encourage dialogue around important issues. You do this with exhibits, workshops, lectures, on-site studios. You really do a lot of work connecting with people that are different than you, and you're showing it to people, a wide range of people, a diverse group of people, and we're hearing these stories from people from all over the world, actually. And I actually first met John, and I finally went and looked this up because I met you back in 2019. After kind of re-meeting you last year. I said, I heard you speak, and I can't remember where. I just remember hearing you speak. I don't know what you were. I just loved it. And it was
Did you find it? Did you look it up and find it?
I did. And it was from 2019 in December, which that's part of why I forgot it, because it just, 2020 was a blur.
Sure, then the world fell apart.
Exactly.
Yes. And the person that emailed me about it, the group, it was part of an organization. I don't even know. I'm like, who is this person I was emailing? I don't know.
Wow, a lot really has changed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just remember her saying, this is a photographer coming to speak. You should come listen. I show up by myself. I heard you speak. And I was like, wow, this is amazing what you're doing. And then I followed you, a little bit and over the years. And then you show up at this big event that I was doing for a book club. This event had like 100 people. And I said, there's the guy. There's John.
And you made me use your cell phone and take a picture of that group of 100 people, didn't you?
I did.
Oh, there's a photographer. Put him to work.
There we go.
And let me tell you, it was a great photo. I knew he could do it. Almost everyone else there were women. So, I said,
I remember
know
that.
John. Yep. And then since then, this same group, you did a lecture for us. And it has been great. So I absolutely am a fan of the work that you're doing. I think the work you're doing is so important. There's so much that we can learn from each other, and especially with the world the way it is. There's so much noise and anger and arguing that we don't always take the time to stop and listen. Mm-hmm. And speaking about like your work as a photographer, and the reason I think this is such a great interview to have you on here is a lot of people get into art, they get into photography, they want to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And especially when you're starting out, it's very easy to just get sucked into whatever just kind of naturally happens to you. I know for myself personally, there are times I'm like, what am I doing? I don't feel like this is meaningful to me. And what you've done is you have actually, from the time you started, created a nonprofit doing work that is highly meaningful to you. And so I think you're a good example of somebody that can actually have an idea, want to do something meaningful, and create that. So before I keep going on and about you, I want to hear from you. How would you describe personally this work that you do?
It's well, let me preface that by saying that I'm so excited to be here with you. I know
Yeah.
we both have busy schedules, and so I'm glad we got this on the books finally. Not long ago, I had somebody, probably 15 or 16 years old. We were sitting around a dining room table, and he said, "So what is it you do?" And I maybe talked for 15 minutes explaining it. And at the end of that 15 minutes, he said, "Right. So what is it you do?" So it's a little bit unlike anything else in the world, I think, which is
Yes.
both lovely and sometimes daunting. But
Mhm.
I'll give you my best elevator speech, and then you can ask me more questions and we'll
Okay.
clarify it.
Yes.
Like you said, a piece of my mind, PEACE, is this storytelling and multimedia project in a divided world. We use storytelling and art to try to remember what connects us. And
Uh,
so we've got five traveling exhibits. We've got 4 books. I do public engagements at colleges, community centers, places of faith, conferences, and use this process of storytelling to try to help people have difficult conversations, to talk about conflict resolution and civic responsibility and social change. And through the years, the people who I've interviewed are folks who've marched with Dr. King, and their Holocaust survivors, and their wounded veterans, and people who've been through the prison system, and folks who have terminal diagnoses, and undocumented immigrants, and this really broad range of who we are as human beings. And it's an exercise for myself as much as anybody else. It's an exercise in seeing that humanity, in trying to
mm,
find that um, common good that we all share. It's an exercise of in hope, healing, and transformation. And we've done programming in about 35 states. I've done programming and gathered stories on 5 different continents.
Wow.
wow.
Excuse me. And you know, it I started it about, oh no, you can edit that out, right?
Yeah, can
Yes.
edit out.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Get your
Yeah.
cough
Cut
out.
that.
Cough it out.
There we go. So or you can leave it. It's part of being human, right?
There you
Yes.
go.
So I've been working on this project for almost 20 years now, and it continues to grow and evolve and show me different ways of looking at the world. How's that for a nutshell?
That's really
I
good.
love it. I love it. And now I can just imagine you saying this to a 15 or
Oh, I know.
16-year-old and
Who's like, but can you just tell me? Are you?
Yeah,
Yes.
so
do
what
you
is
like
that?
exactly? So you're a photographer?
I take pictures. I take pictures and talk to people. That's basically it.
that
There we
is
And try to
yes.
fix the world. It's as
No,
simple as that.
just that minor detail on top there.
Clearly, I have not reached my objective yet, but little bits of light. That's what we're going for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And I would love to hear about how it first of all, how it started and then
Mhm.
how it became, because now it is an official nonprofit, and
Yeah.
that you didn't just start this as a nonprofit. It
Nope.
became one because becoming a nonprofit, I mean, it's a big deal. It's
It's
not
a
like you
lot of
just get to
papers.
go.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, I'm like, I
Yeah.
have no idea where to even start with something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, as a wise person once said to me, you don't have to know everything. You just need to know the people who do. So
There you go.
I had
Outsource.
kind and generous
Outsource.
people hold my hand and help me through the
Mhm.
That's
process. But
amazing.
I always made my career as a photographer. I got my degree in journalism 100,000
Mhm.
years ago. My degree is in writing, but I always made my living as a photographer. So I spent
Oh,
2 years
interesting.
working at a daily paper in Wisconsin, in
Okay.
Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Then Karen, my wife, got a job over in the Twin Cities, and we moved with plans on staying for 2 years, but it's been 35.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think we're
Yeah.
pleasantly stuck in Minnesota. Um, but when we moved over here, I started assisting for commercial studios, started helping out, sweeping the floors and getting coffee for people and setting up lights and all of those things for a lot of product photographers, a lot of people who were shooting Target ads. And I I learned how to take great pictures of boxes of Crayola crayons on a white seamless background.
Yes.
Super exciting. But the newspaper work rooted me in storytelling and human interest stories. The commercial work trained me in lighting skills and how to run a business. And then after a couple of years of that, I went out on my own. I started my own business 4 months after buying our first house and 4 months before our first child was born.
Oh,
My parents
wow.
were super
That
thrilled.
timing.
Yeah,
No
great
kidding.
timing. But I knew I wanted to go out on my own. I had started shooting my own personal projects evenings and weekends, and I got so busy that I either had to free up more time or turn away some of those freelance projects. And I knew this was the direction I wanted to go. It just was time to try it. And so that was 31 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And through most of that time, I shot for national magazines and Fortune 500 companies. I did a lot of travel projects across the United States and around the world. And
Okay.
I sort of came to realize that it was my job to see beauty in unexpected places, that it was my job to find something good in places where other people might struggle to find it, which is to say, I shot projects for the Kansas Tourism Office. And in some ways, Kansas is a sparse landscape to photograph, but in other ways, it's unique and beautiful in its own special way. And it was my job to find those things.
Yeah.
So that was all rolling along at 100 miles an hour until the recession of 2008 and 2009, where I like to say the economy handed me some free time.
Yes.
That's a good way to put
Yeah,
it.
I mean, maybe you know other people that happened to. Maybe it happened to you, but
Yeah.
my workload dropped quickly and dramatically. And about that same time, I was increasingly frustrated with the quality of our national dialogue and all of the things that ask us to look at what can separate us. And I wondered if there was something I could do with my photography and storytelling to rediscover what connects us. And so you said it, Whitney, in the introduction about all of these, loud and angry voices that are in the world. I realized I didn't want to shout back at the angry voices. I didn't think I would win. My voice isn't that loud and angry, I guess. But B, I didn't think it would be effective. And so what I chose to do instead was to create an alternative, a space where we could hear one another's stories and we could celebrate one another's hearts and the way we live in the world. And so I had no idea what that would look like. But I started by doing one interview. I built the interview around this question: what does peace mean to you? How do you work towards it in your life? What are some of the obstacles you encounter along the way? Almost everybody I had met in my travels would welcome a little bit more peace into their lives, but we're really not good at doing that. We're not good at making it. And so I just wanted to have these conversations, and I interviewed one person, and it was interesting. So I interviewed another person. We would sit down and record the interview, create a podcast like this. I would do a portrait because I'm a photographer. And over time, I started building this body of work, and it kept getting more interesting to me. And so a little bit of assignment work that I was still shooting sort of subsidized it all. But I was more and more interested in this project, even though it earned me zero money. So I kind of, I think I self-sabotaged the assignment stuff. I just stopped paying attention to it, hoping something would come of this. And it took years, but now it's turned into all that I do. It was in 2020, during the pandemic, that we filed paperwork to be a nonprofit. I was so busy doing the thing of a piece of my mind and figuring out how it could fit into the world and how it could maybe generate some revenue that I liked the idea of a nonprofit, but I had no time to do it. And I hate paperwork. And so I had people saying, you should really form a nonprofit. People want to help you. People want to support this effort. It's really cool what you're doing. And I'd say, yeah, and forget about it. But during the pandemic, I had some time on my hands.
Oh my goodness. I feel like there's been some pivotal moments here for you where it has been where something has happened in the world that has caused pause, and you have made amazing decisions during those times. That
Well,
is
they're almost all rooted in going broke. I guess that's the common theme.
Yes.
Not broke. We've never not eaten. We've never not, we've
Yeah.
always been fine, but we've had to make some hard
Yeah.
choices. And yeah, I think sometimes we get really comfortable where we are. And if the phone keeps ringing and the projects keep coming in, I was not going to turn away a phone call to go photograph a spot in Chicago one week and a tropical rainforest research station in Panama the next week. I wasn't going to say no to that. But when the space opened up, there was sort of this hunger inside that was chewing away at me. And it gave me time to start exploring that, both so I didn't go nuts, while had some downtime, and also just to feed my soul a little bit and
Yep.
follow that passion.
I love that. And I love hearing about how long it's taken you, because I think kind of no matter what section of life you're in or what niche you're wanting to work in, or, photography or not, there's this idea that you have an idea, you want to do something, and you start it. And if it doesn't happen right away, it's a bad idea. Let's give up. Let's move on to something else. Let's take the safe way. And you said you've been working for years without making any money doing this. And I think it's really important to keep telling these stories. This didn't magically happen. This
Yeah.
was years of hard work for you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also being willing to eventually start saying no, or not, just losing some of it, which I think is good. If you miss out on something, maybe you're making space for something else coming in.
Maybe there's
So,
something else waiting in the wings that you
yep.
were meant to do. I mean,
Mhm.
I should tell you that there were about 107 times where I said to myself in this process, maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe this is not worth doing. Maybe I should I could make more money working at McDonald's, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a different way, but little by little, it started turning into a thing. I kept getting little morsels of encouragement. People would show up after I did a little talk, and they would be clearly touched and moved by the stories. I could see it doing good work in people's lives and in people's hearts, and that was enough to keep me going. Every time I did a new interview, I found it enriching for myself. Really, really, it occurs to me we're 20 minutes into this, and you could very well look at me and say, "So what is it you do?" I understand that this will flesh out as we're talking, but
Yes.
as I'm interviewing people while I'm creating this content, I really have three audiences in mind. And the first is myself. Because every time I sit down with somebody who's very different than me or has had very different life experiences, I come to the table with certain expectations. They're always proven wrong. And I learn something in that process. So in a really selfish way, I'm the first audience. I want to learn. I want to understand things in a new way. The second audience is that person I'm interviewing, because it's really important to me that at the end of the process, they feel seen and heard and valued. I am the poster child of privilege, all the things, cisgendered, white, male, college educated, live in the suburbs, got a Cocker Spaniel dog sitting by my side, all those things. And a lot of people who I interviewed don't share that same privilege. And so it's really important to me that I remove my filter as much as possible and do what I can to honor and amplify their voices so that they feel whole at the end of it. So that's the second audience. And the third is the bigger public, because I figure if I'm learning something in the process, if we can curate and carry these stories around, maybe somebody else is going to learn something as well. So that's the process that has kept me going for all these years.
Oh, that's beautiful. Let's say there's a photographer that's listening to this and they feel this kind of calling to do something meaningful or impactful, or something on the lines of like bring about social change. What would be your advice to them for them to begin?
Oh, Far be it from me to know how anybody else should operate their lives. I can barely figure out how to operate mine. But I'll tell you that for me, when I hear that little voice or feel that little tug, I've learned that I should probably pay attention, because when I don't, I become unhappy. And when I don't, I get restless. And when I don't, the tug and the call are just going to get louder. And so I would say pay attention. I think, like was the case with me, um, if you wait until everything makes sense about the journey, if you wait until you have everything figured out, you might never move, right? You're never going to have it figured out to your own satisfaction to say, oh, okay, this is the path, or at least this is how I work. I just need to move. If I think maybe I should try a little something, I go try it. And if it doesn't work, if I hit a wall, I back up again, turn a little bit, and then go forward again. And I think a lot of us get paralyzed waiting until we see a crystal clear vision of where we should head.
Yeah.
And I think I often relate it to walking down a foggy path where you can see a couple steps ahead of you, but you can't really see any farther. But if you take those couple of steps that are visible, well, then the fog lifts a little bit and you can see something else. And so, for me, I figured as long as I could see a couple steps ahead of me, I would take that step. And I think if somebody has that little tug, they should explore it, see where it goes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
To me, that speaks volumes just in general, too. My husband and I talk to our kids a lot about trusting your gut and that your body tells you what you need to do.
Yeah.
And there is so much of us that I think ignores that, especially the older we get. We think about all of the, well, what ifs? What if this doesn't work out? What if I try this and it's not happening and I don't even know what my big plans are for this? And we get so bogged down in like you said, there's no crystal ball. We get bogged down in the muck and we're like, nah, maybe I'll do that later. But then that doesn't happen. And like you said, little voice.
Yeah, I failed to develop those adult inclinations to question my whimsy. And so so I follow them, but I also believe that is a lost skill, and it is a cultivated skill. Like we need to practice it. And sometimes that voice can be really quiet and easy to ignore. Sometimes the voice of the world that tells us, well, you've got a mortgage and you should do that.
Yeah.
And normal people don't do that. Those voices get really loud. And I have become expert in ignoring the rational adult voices and pursuing the whimsy, the joy, and the passion, not to the exclusion of the other things.
Yeah.
You need to be sensible. But I think that as we age, that gets harder to do.
Yeah.
And I'm, by gosh, I'm determined to do it.
That's
I
wonderful.
love it.
I need to
I am stubborn, if nothing else.
Yes.
There you go. I know. I was like, I
Yes.
need to start. I like that. Harnessing my whimsy.
Yeah.
And I think, for people that are our listeners here, people that are doing photography, starting a photography business, there's not a, hey, you want to be a portrait photographer? Like, this is your clear path to do it. And almost everybody that we talk to, even if they went to school for photography, the way that they found themselves into creating a business, into making this a career, was never the normal way. We all got here so differently. And so that's something I love about artists and creatives and photographers specifically, is that we actually a lot of times do hear that voice that is a part of us. And I love that you call it whimsy, because, we've interviewed so many people who were just doing their life was like, oh, camera, that sounds fun. And then all of a sudden they've got this like amazing business. They're doing stuff that really fulfills them. And, and the thing is too, you can go even further than that. That doesn't have to just be portraits. It doesn't have to just be weddings. It can be something that you're thinking of that nobody else has done. Like you said, like nobody's doing this. And it all started with that question of, what does peace mean to you? That one question, and now you're here. So I
Well,
think
and
that's
let me
amazing.
let me just walk you through some of the nuts and bolts of it. By the time I'd done a dozen interviews, again, I didn't know what this could turn into, but I was just curious if it could be a way for people to have conversations. And I did a dozen interviews, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should start a website." And I said, "Well, I don't even know what I'm trying to do yet." And he said, "Just start the website and you'll figure it out as you go." And then I got to 50 interviews, and I received a Minnesota State Arts Board grant to produce an exhibit. It was a program called Arts Tour Minnesota, and it would produce an exhibit and help cover the travel for the first 3 exhibits. So I went to St. Cloud to the public library. I went to Fergus Falls to a history museum. I don't remember where the third one was, but my apologies to those third people. But then when the exhibit was out there and moving around, people looked at it and said, "Oh, you should have a book, because I'd like to take these stories home so I can spend some more time with it." Well, I couldn't find a publisher, so we did a Kickstarter campaign and we crowdfunded it, and we made our first book. And then people said, excuse me, all of those stories were from Minnesota, and people said, "Oh, wouldn't it be really neat if these were stories from all across the country?" And so as I started booking my exhibit at different venues around the country, instead of shipping the exhibit, I would drive it there, and along the way, I would do new interviews. And so I had an exhibit in Atlanta, and I planned a 3-week road trip to go drop it off and do new interviews along the way. So then it turned into a bigger national project. When we got into the pandemic and all of my programming went away, my very wise wife, Karen, said, "Well, why don't we sell the house and you can still do new interviews from the road?" And so during the pandemic, we sold the house and bought a van and lived 2.5 years full-time on the road doing new interviews all around the country. And none of it felt unusual. None of it felt big or bold. It just felt like the next natural step. And then when we got back from being on the road, people are like, well, I started saying, wow, I've done all of this stuff in the United States. What would it be like to do international stories? So I just spent 3 weeks this summer in Northern Ireland talking about how people there have navigated some of their sectarian violence. Next year, I'll probably go to Rwanda and talk about the ways people have moved through the genocide that happened there. And all of this is just one little building block, one little building block, one little building block. And, I like to say we walk through the doors that open up, but sometimes you got to knock on those doors pretty hard.
Yeah. Yep. That's true. Yep.
Yeah.
I love it. And I made sure to grab my book, and you actually, you gave this to me, John. When I came to, you did.
I do that to some of the very nice people who I meet. Not all of the very nice people, because I'd go broke, but some of them.
But you gave this before I even had a chance to buy it. But it is beautiful, these images. And you were, this is from the George Floyd, and you were here photographing, and I was here living during that time. And so it's a beautiful book, and I love that you just were like, well, I want a book. I'm going to make a book. Let's do it.
Bring it into the frame a little more, Whitney, so we can see it. There it is. Ta-da.
Oh, okay. I'm actually seeing, sorry, I am seeing my widescreen.
All right, sorry. I feel like you're seeing widescreen. We're not.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
We just see, there it is.
So whatever I opened to is an image of the George Floyd protest. But this is New Orleans right here that I'm showing you.
That's New Orleans. So you mentioned George Floyd, and for this book in particular, when I say this is a project about peace, it is not about rainbows and daisies and unicorns. It is not about this idealistic view of the world, unless you interpret idealistic as a willingness to confront the very real issues we're facing.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that difficulty, look for creative solutions. Because what we did for that book is we very intentionally went to all of the tension points in our country. We went to the border to talk about immigration. We went to Mississippi to talk about race. We went to Skid Row to talk about housing security. But always in our methodology, we were looking for people who were finding creative solutions to some of these really difficult issues. Not the folks who throw up their hands and say, oh, all's lost, this is
Yeah.
hopeless. But the people who look at this and go, no, this is really hard, but I think I have an idea. And then they get to work and do it. And those are the voices of hope and healing. Those are the voices who believe that something better is possible that we really want to amplify. And that's what we're trying to do now with the international stories as well. So yeah, when George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis, I went to that intersection every day for the first week with this studio process, which it occurs to me, we haven't even talked about the studio process. We'll get to that. But I went out on the street and I just asked people, what do you want to say? Not to decide who was right and who was wrong, not to decide what the narrative should be, but just to listen, to hear, to have an honest assessment of this is where we're at and this is what we're doing.
Yes. And then why don't you go ahead now and tell us the process that you use?
So these long form interviews that I use in the book and exhibit, those are, we sit down, we record an hour-long oral history, and I do the portrait. But we wanted to find a way to make this a little bit more interactive too. And so we started doing these public studios. And like I did at the intersection of 38th and Chicago, where George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis, I bring a light, sometimes a background, sometimes not. And we ask people a question, one really simple question. In this case, we asked people, what do you want to say? And people write their response in 25 words or less. We do a black and white portrait and we combine those, we drop the words on top of on the blank space in the portrait. So in a day, we can create a body of work of 30 or 40 or 50 people and really use that to help a community articulate some of their mission, vision, and values. And so we've worked with veterans around suicide prevention and trauma. And we've asked them, what do you want the world to understand? We've asked people, when have you found unexpected courage? When have you bridged a divide? When have you been your best self? And it's a process of listening. And we'll do this at conferences and colleges. And then at the end of it, when normal people are sleeping, I do all of the editing for this. And so we can flip it really fast and I can produce that as a series of stills and as a video and share it back to the community the next day. And it's this really rich and immediate way for people to look at their peers and themselves in some new and transformative ways.
And I believe the one from George Floyd, you did a video that is online. And we will link to many of these. So listeners, look in our show notes so you can go and see this work. And it's amazing. Also, you should see if there's an exhibit coming close to you.
Yeah, if you go on
are those open to the public?
A lot of them, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everything is listed on our website under the events page. And it's got links to tickets if you need that. I mean, everything's always free, but we like people to sign up so we know who's going to be coming. But we have a studio space in St. Paul that we just started sharing with some other media producers a year ago. We have live events there. We've got exhibits across the country. We're just going out to Buffalo, New York next week. And the week or 2 weeks after that, I'm going up to do some programming with the Standing Rock Reservation up in North Dakota.
Yeah.
So we move around. And yeah, if people can check out the website, they can see if we're coming anywhere near them.
And when we did the event for the Governors, which is the book club that you hosted, we got to go see this exhibit in your studio. We got to see the large portraits and the words, and there's something about standing in front of these people's stories with other people around you walking and doing the same thing and reading. It's an entire experience. It's very different than just watching a YouTube video, and it feels more real. I feel like you can take in the story and who that person is as you're standing there looking at it. So definitely, if you can go see it, that would be awesome. And I was wondering, from all of these people that you have interviewed, that you photographed, what is something that you've learned that has changed the way that you see the world or that you see yourself?
How much longer do we have to talk? That could take a while, Whitney. I mean, everybody has something. Everybody shares something that I walk away going, oh, wow, that was amazing. That was beautiful. There are some themes and there are some lessons. I mean, the book that you just showed us is called Lessons on the Road to Peace, and it talks about a lot of those. But I have three things that it sort of boils down to for me. And the first is to be willing to listen deeply, right? To show up and give people your full attention, to make eye contact, to let them finish their thoughts, to ask curious questions, and to really be engaged in that conversation. I don't have to tell people that I think they're wrong or that I think I have a better answer. You know, my favorite questions are, what do you mean by that? And tell me more. Right? To give people space to really sort of unfold and unpack what they're talking about and to not feel under attack in the process. Because sometimes you need that space to breathe and you need that space to really go back and forth before you're going to get at the kernel of what people are talking about. So that willingness to listen deeply is big. Along with that, a willingness to challenge my own expectations. Because like I said, I go into a lot of these places where I am unfamiliar with the culture. I am unfamiliar with all of the history and what's going on. I may think I have an idea, but turns out maybe my idea is a little off base. And so I need to continually stay open to the possibility that I might learn something new, that I might see things in a different way. And so that's my second job. The third thing is a willingness to stay at the table. You know, we talk about all of these issues that seem completely intractable and unsolvable in our country. And it seems like the solutions we bring to the table are maybe ill-equipped to deal with the scope of the challenge. But I think as long as we stay engaged, as long as we remain at the table, there's some hope that we can find a path forward. But when we walk away from the table, the hope walks away with us. And so my challenge to people, and frankly to myself, is when things get difficult, will you stay at the table? Will you stay engaged? Will you keep showing up? Will you keep doing the hard work, even when it feels like you're treading water?
Oh, that's something I need to hear, honestly.
Yeah, me too,
It is
honestly.
very, it's easy to get hopeless. And there is hope. You're right. If you just stop even trying, nothing will change. I feel like we could end the interview right there. It'd be great. But I do have a couple more things. Just
I'll try to give you worthy answers.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Because I feel like we could talk about this for so long.
I know.
But
I was thinking like this would just be the starting point. Okay, now let's really start the interview, John. Now that
Yeah, right. So what do you do, John? What is it that you do?
The title of our episode.
Right.
What do you do, John?
Yeah. This is where it gets good, though. I feel
it's its own series.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I know last year you hired interns for the first time. And I'm curious, how did you find these interns? Are they photographers? Who are these people?
I
was going to say just for like if somebody's interested in interning, or just even how could an intern find this sort of job?
Am I going to get 100,000 emails asking to be my intern? Is that what's about to happen?
I would actually be very impressed if you did that. I would say yes.
No,
if you guys means we've taken off.
So to be clear, I've had interns before. This was the first year I've had 3 interns, and it was because I had done a project in Northern Ireland with Willamette University.
Oh wow, yes.
Met some of the students.
I know Willamette University.
Yeah, great school out in Salem, Oregon, and this was a program called the Conversation Project, which trained students in having challenging social conversations. And when I was in Northern Ireland, one of them started having a conversation, expressing some interest in being an intern. Then the advisors came back and said, well, what would you think about having 3 interns? And Willamette had some of the resources to make that possible. And so, they are all trained in civic conversation, having these difficult conversations. None of them specifically are photographers or videographers, but all of them are, going into their senior year and just sort of innately comfortable with all of these different media tools. And so
Mhm.
they came along and helped me record audio, helped me navigate some of the logistics. They did a little bit of the interviewing themselves. They produced some videos and some social media content. And so through the course of the summer, we started out at the Telluride Mountain Film Festival. Then we went to Northern Ireland for a few weeks. We came back to do some programming at Big Sky, Montana, with a group called the Montana Institute. We went down to New Orleans and the watery part south of there to talk about climate resilience. It was the 20th anniversary of Katrina and Rita hitting down there. And so we went to look at how that has impacted the region and how people are finding creative solutions to live in a really fragile coastline that's washing away.
Oh yeah, that's great. And I think what I'm seeing from you, and we've actually interviewed another photojournalist who then was a sports photographer. It was Jenny.
Oh yeah, Jenny Buchanan.
Yeah,
Jennifer
yeah.
Buchanan.
And I think it's interesting. I love hearing these additional skills that you have that are important, not just for the work you do, but I do think no matter where you are coming into your photography skill or your photography career, the ability to communicate with people and how you make them feel and listening, all of this we can take into not only our everyday life, but into doing your job well, because you're photographing a wedding, you're photographing kids, you want them to feel safe and comfortable and like you care. That actually is a huge skill. Just even hearing that these interns were training in civic engagement, but they're still able to go and be a part of this project with you. And then just even knowing, I guess before I started doing this podcast, I didn't realize how just even journalism can be so connected with photography. And it's not just somebody, a photojournalist isn't just somebody that goes out and takes photos. There's all this like storytelling and engagement that's behind them.
Yeah, and building relationships and finding trust. I mean, when I went up to do some stories with the Water Protectors, which is an indigenous-led, women-led movement of protest to resist an oil pipeline going under the Mississippi River. You know, when I showed up at the camp at their invitation, I didn't even bring my cameras out for the first 3 days. You know, we sat around the fire and we talked to one another and got to know each other. We listened to music, stupid jokes. We just took time to build a little bit of trust before even really diving into the stories, because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand why trust between someone who looks like me and someone from their community can be different. Can be difficult. I mean, there are a lot of examples of where that trust has been broken, and I need to acknowledge that and recognize that and earn that trust in different ways. And that's a part of the process too, right? Because you don't get invited to go out on a shrimp fisherman's boat in the Gulf of Mexico to pull in 1,200 pounds of shrimp overnight if you don't do the hard work of building a little bit of trust first. And that's a part of the process.
Oh, that's great. That's such great advice. Look at you.
It's almost like you've been doing this for a while.
Yes.
Okay, John, so I have a question. You've talked about interviewing a lot of different people from many different walks of life and in many different states. How do you choose who it is that you're going to be interviewing and talking to? Like, what does that process look like?
It's a little different every time. I mean, I am first and foremost guided by my own curiosity. If there's something I want to learn more about, what a great platform to be able to explore it, find somebody who's deeply engaged and close to the issues and sit down and talk with them. That being the case, it's hard to know if you're going down to the border, who should you interview? And so I'll usually find an advocate or an ally. In this case, down along the border, I connected with somebody who I went to high school with who runs a small nonprofit called Voices from the Border. They do work to try to support people who are waiting for their asylum hearings to happen. So India Aubrey was my classmate who runs that organization. And so I was able to talk to India, and she, of course, has a deep network of relationships and connections down in that part of the world. And India could help me line up the first, 6 or 8 interviews Well, then I would plan on, that would fill up the first week, but I would
Mhm.
plan on staying for 4 weeks, or in this case, 6 weeks. And everybody I interviewed, I would end the interview by saying, who else do I need to talk to? Who else should I get
Okay.
to know? And who else has a unique perspective on these issues? And so once we were in the area, we could start to develop that network. So most of the time I have these interviews lined up before I even leave home, so
Mhm.
that I know I can be productive out in the field. That being said, every once in a while, there are happy accidents and something just lands in your lap.
Mhm.
I was standing in a coffee shop in Columbus, Mississippi, and started talking to the guy in front of me, and his name was Neil. And I like to play with words. And I said, so what's your deal, Neil? And I know,
It's like a perfect
it's
dad joke.
just that dorky. Perfect, great dad joke. And he said, oh, I'm just paddling my canoe 6,500 miles across America to remember what's beautiful about this country. And I'm
Wow.
like, oh, I'm not going to have a day off after all, am I?
Yeah.
What do you say we sit down and do an interview? So sometimes you just stumble on these things,
Yeah.
and having the luxury of time built
Mhm.
into this journey across the country, we had the opportunity to say yes and walk through those doors when they opened. So some combination of journalistic research and exploration, and then the whimsy,
A
just
little
being
bit
able
of
to say yes.
exactly. A little bit of luck there thrown in too. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
sometimes what's the word? Not spontaneity, not whimsy. Oh no.
Serendipity.
Anyway, that's the
There we
word.
go.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes
Yep.
serendipity is smarter than my best laid plans. So being willing to follow that helps.
Now, looking back, knowing everything that you know now, and we ask this of everyone, what
Okay.
would you do differently in your career?
I would be bolder
Hmm.
sooner.
Hmm.
I think a lot of my younger career moves were rooted in not fear, but a notion of scarcity. And oh my gosh, how is this going to work? How am I going to put all of this together? And I think when you can come at it from a sense of abundance, it's a little easier to be bold. And again, when people look at Karen and I selling our house and going to live on the road full time for 2.5 years, a lot of people say, oh my gosh, that's so brave. I don't know if I could do that. It didn't feel brave. Or people would say, going down to the intersection of 38th and Chicago where George Floyd was killed. Well, wasn't that scary? Well, no, none of it was. It felt like a natural step. And I think, so I'll share one story from that book that you were showing us. And this is a woman named Rose Berger, who works for an organization called Sojourners in DC. And she had gone to Ukraine. She had just gotten back from Ukraine to do an interfaith prayer delegation trip, to really go into a war zone and pray with people for peace. And she said, in the process of explaining this, she said, my partner and I realized it was worth taking a small risk for peace. And I said, okay, Rose, that's all well and good, but I got to tell you, some of my people, they might interpret that as a big risk. You went into a war zone. And she said, yeah, but I've come to realize that things look scarier from far away. And I love that quote, right? Because if we're looking way down the road at something, it might look daunting or scary or unachievable or unwise. But when we get in proximity, when we start getting close to it, when we get engaged with those issues and get close to them, they might be a little less scary. And so again, don't wait until you have it all sorted out. I'm not going to advise that everybody should go into a war zone, because I know that's not for everybody. But if you've got some reluctance, stretch yourself a little bit. Try that thing. It might not be as daunting as you imagine it is.
That's really good advice.
So good. Oh my gosh.
I'm trying to convince myself too. just so
Yeah.
you know.
You have really shared some powerful statements, and I say statement, that word is not the word. It's more than that. But I'm like, man, there's so many times where you're like, okay, that's the point. We end the interview. Man, that's great. Let's leave on that.
Wait, are you telling me that you've wanted to end the interview multiple
That's how
times
it
during
sounds
this
like, right?
conversation?
No.
That doesn't sound right. I know what you're saying. Thank you.
Yes. This has been so great hearing from you. This is all such I think where I'm coming from is what you're sharing today is so much more than a photography podcast. What you're doing and how you're sharing these stories and the way you're showing up and doing your work, this is something that all of us, whether you're a photographer or not, it's really important for all of us as Americans, as people that are living in such a divisive time. And not just Americans, but as as humanity, if we all had these skills of showing up and listening and getting close and realizing that person that is right there in front of you is not as scary as being far away has made them to feel, and being able to have conversations one-on-one, this is something that's so lacking today. And I do that as well. I when I'm far back from something, I can get overwhelmed or I can get angry and I don't want to listen. It really is a skill. But I think for us just to be able to live in this world with each other, we have to be able to do that. We have to be able to do that. And I just really appreciate you coming on this photography business podcast and sharing this, not just with us, but it's so important. So I really, really appreciate it. And we've said this over and over, you're a nonprofit, which means
you
don't have
help.
Businesses giving money. Yes. So how can somebody support you?
Yeah. So, I mean, we do have a few different legs of revenue stream to make this all work, to hold it all together. When we go out and we do lectures and exhibits, there are exhibit leasing fees, there are programming fees, and that sort of sustains more programming. But when we go out to do new stories, when I went to 38th in Chicago for George Floyd, as we were traveling across the country in a van, those weren't producing revenue, but they are stories that are important to tell. So that's all donor funded. In fact, we're launching our fundraising campaign now. We're a 501c3, so everything is deductible. People can go onto our website and make a one-time or a monthly donation, and that supports us. That's how we get to go down to New Orleans to do these stories about climate resilience. That's how we got to go to Northern Ireland, and it's how we're going to be able to expand our team. Mostly, this has just been me with a little bit of contract help, but we just added a full-time person, Nick Tyson, as a coordinator to help line up some of our events. And we're going to add another person who can shoot video, and that all takes resources.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like National Public Radio on a much smaller scale. If you believe these stories are important, please step up and support it, because we are sustained by the generosity of good people who believe that stories can connect us.
I want to interject real quick, Whitney.
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying this because my husband used to work for Microsoft. So if anybody is listening and you want to donate, if you work for a corporation or if your partner does, a lot of times the places they work will match that donation. So that is a really great way to double that. That's what, anytime I would collect donations for different things with my business, if I was supporting a different cause for that month, I would have my husband do the donation because Microsoft would match that. So I love putting that out there, that if you do have that available to you, that is an amazing way that you can, it's almost like giving double. Being able to do that.
Matching dollars are magical. Thanks for that.
Yes, they really
and
are.
I don't know
so
if,
I really wanted to put that
I don't
out there.
know if I said, you just go to our website, apieceofmymind.org, and there's a little tab for donations there. You can do it right on site. You can mail a check. Our address is there. We're a small enough organization that even a little bit helps move the needle.
Yep. And this book. And you
and book sales. That helps support us too.
Book. Yes, I know. I'm like, now I'm making sure you can see it instead of.
And please, please, please buy the books from our website.
Yeah.
Don't go on Amazon. Sorry, Amazon, but there is one person who makes money from Amazon, and it's not the author. It's not the artist. So go straight to our website, and that's where you can get the book and support our mission. And then it comes straight to me and I will sign it for you. And I am the one who puts it in an envelope and ships it in the mail. And so it's a direct to producer sort of channel.
That's great. And if you don't have any money to donate or buy a book, follow John on Instagram, share his work.
Tell your friends.
Do what you can to share. Tell your friends. If you're at a school, at a college, and you think, man, this would be so great if he came and spoke, go talk to someone and help get him out there. I think it's not just him, but this whole organization and this whole way of approaching the world. So there's so many different ways you can support.
Thanks, Whitney.
Yes. So that is that's it. We are done with our interview.
And Whitney has found her moment to end.
There's the exit.
Yeah.
Got it.
And it's more that I'm like, this would be a very good clip to end on, but I have so much more I want to talk about. So that's that's the way to look at it. I don't want it to end. But so make sure you go follow John, follow us. We are going to have all of this information in the description. If you're not on our email list, jump on in there. We've got so much more coming your way to help you out. And it's the best way to connect with us. We feel so lucky to be able to talk to people like John and be able to share it with you. All right. We will see you next time.
Yeah,
Bye,
what a fun
everyone.
conversation.
Bye.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, Photo BFFs, if you have not subscribed, do that right now so you never miss a new episode. You can also find us at theeditweekly.com where we have free resources and downloads for you to help grow your photo business.